Hey everyone, I'm popping in for a pop-up training on shamans. You might know that next week on the 27th, I'm going to teach a masterclass called Journey into Trance. And I'm going to be talking about journeying and trance work that's utilized by shamanic practitioners. And so I wanted to come on now with a few pop-ups to kind of share some information and do some mini trainings so that you're ready for the masterclass that happens on Wednesday. So I appreciate you joining me here. What I'm going to cover is what a shaman is, what they do, and why they do what they do. I'm also going to cover the difference between traditional shamans and modern shamanic practitioners. And then I'm going to give you two relevant shamanic practices that you can utilize in your everyday life. So thanks for being here. Hi there, Andrea. Good to see you. If you are catching this live, I'm happy that you're here. If you're catching the replay, and I know a lot of you will be doing that, I welcome your questions and I thank you for catching the replay. If you don't know me, I should introduce myself, right? I'm Brighid Murphy. I'm a modern shamanic practitioner and empowerment teacher for healers and leaders who are ready to take their gifts into the world. And so I ignite a fire so that happens. And if you're stuck and you're ready to make a big shift in your life for going forward, you can sign up for a free breakthrough session with me. I'll put the link below. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about shamans. So as we do that, I want you to just take a minute to ground in. Take a minute to recognize you've had a busy day and you're here with me, no matter what time it is, ready to be present and absorb what I'm about to share with you. So take a few breaths, breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. And deliberately and intentionally bring your focus into the center. As shamanic practitioners, shamanic healers, shamans create the reality that they want to be living in. They influence their reality. And one of the main ways that we can influence our reality is to choose. Maybe not in every moment yet, but to choose right here and now to be 100% present with our breath, present with our bodies, and present with what is in front of us. So thank you for grounding in with me. So as we talk about shaman, I'm going to dive right in here and explain that this is a word that is really loosely applied when referring to First Peoples, First Nation peoples, and natural healers. It's very loosely applied. And it's also very loosely applied when we're talking about all types of energy healing. Shaman, and the word shaman has actually very specific meaning. The word came to us in the 1500s when European people observed Siberian tribal practices. And what they observed, and what a shaman is somebody who goes into a deep trance state to meet the spirits in the spirit world, to converse with them, and bring back information to the people. Now that information comes to the shaman, it also comes through the shaman. And there's different levels of trance that happen depending on what's happening and how the shaman communicates with the spirits. I'm going to talk more about that in the masterclass next week. So a shaman is someone who goes into a trance state to talk to the spirits. I should probably mention, you may be familiar with the word animist. And animist is somebody who believes that there is a spirit or an essence in everything, like a spirit in the trees, in the water, in animals. An animist believes that spirit is in all living things. A shaman is someone who talks to those spirits. So not all animists are shamans. All shamans are animists. You have to believe in the spirits that you're communicating with. And an animist believes that the spirit is everywhere. So we know that a shaman is someone who goes into an altered state to seek the help of the spirits. And they do so intentionally. What they do is they use percussive instruments, plant spirit medicine. They use a vehicle to move closer to the spirits so that they can talk to them and bring back power, restore order and balance, and help people and the planet to heal. That is the role of a shaman. A shaman is one whose whole entire life is dedicated to healing and helping and restoring balance. Shamanic practices may differ in different parts of the world, but there's a common thread that runs through them. And the goal of all shamans and why they go into these altered states is the same. It's to bring back power, it's to restore order and balance, and to help people and the planet to heal. I'm going to take a moment to say, hey, Donna, thanks for joining us. And so I want to say, please know that not all Native American people are shamans. And please know that not all indigenous people go into trance and talk to spirits. A lot of times when people think shaman, because of the way we romanticize First Nations people and we romanticize traditional healers, they get an image of them in their mind of a North American medicine man or woman with a feathered headdress. I need to let you know that that is not what shamans look like in all different cultures. If you look into Mongolia, the shamans in there do not wear headdresses like they do here in North America. So there's a distinct difference in the feel and the look of a shaman from a different land. But because we're kind of limited in our scope and we don't always have access to what a shaman is or does in other lands, we kind of all lump it together with North American First Nations people. And I need to tell you that it doesn't look like that. That's not how it looks like all over the globe. So one of the things that is common between all shamans is that the techniques that they employ are along the same lines. Like I said earlier, a shaman restores power. There's techniques, ceremonies that allow for those techniques that are very similar across the globe. Modern conversation, people are usually familiar with the word soul retrieval, bringing back parts that have went into exile or parts of the soul that have gone to different places, fragmented or disassociated completely due to trauma. Now, in some shamanic cultures and beliefs, they understand that there are more than one soul, that a person has more than one soul. And depending on what's happening in their life, when they lose their soul, it's a part of them, but it's not all of them. So there's a lot of different ways even to look at the soul than we're raised with in primarily Christian or Judeo-Christian, North America here. So shamanic healing techniques are something that I talk about in other trainings, but I want to go in and talk about some of the components of shamanic practice, key components. I'm just going to talk about 4 of them to give you an idea of what some of the important aspects or components of shamanism are. The first one is listening. Listening to the unseen realms, listening to the spirits, listening to the natural world, listening to someone's soul, listening to what someone's soul is communicating. That's a primary component there. And we're used to being really active and responding, but in a shaman's world, there's a lot of listening, a lot of receiving that goes on. Second component is the creation of a reciprocal relationship with spirit in the natural world. So it's not a commanding and a demanding thing where a shaman commands the natural world. It may happen in some particular instances, but it doesn't happen that way across the board. A shaman is in a relationship, and relationships are reciprocal. You give, you receive. You ask, and you listen. I'll tell you, if we did that in our world today, and I believe we're getting there, that's why shamanism has become there's such a surge in it. If we do that, we're going to change the way that we do life and change what's possible on this planet. So the listening, the ask, and the receive is a big component to shamanic practice. Another component is ceremony. A ceremony is a formula for opening a door to all potential. It's a formula, but it also creates a container so that spirit can speak to us. All of my trainings are done in ceremony, and that really enhances our experience, and it makes the container sacred and secure when we create it in that way. The fourth component to shamanic practice is stepping aside, getting out of the way and allowing spirit to talk through you, to guide you. Another thing this is another thing we're not trained to do here in our culture. We're taught to manage, make it happen, control. But in shamanism, we don't interfere with what spirit is trying to say. We step aside and let it come through. We're conduits. A shaman is a conduit. And I always think of it like a hose. Water hose, it does its job. You put it on the ground, or you put it where you want it to go, you turn it on, and the hose just works. The hose doesn't say, I'm a hose, I'm working, I'm a hose, I'm working. Isn't this great? Look at me, I'm a hose, I'm working. The hose doesn't do that. The hose is present and contains the water and makes sure that the water gets through where it needs to go. Shamans are intermediaries between the human and the spirit world. They're often pretty chill and they're pretty humble. They hold their power really well because they understand their role and responsibility with what they take on. And so I'm just going to pause here and take a breath and see how everybody's doing, because I sure can. If you know me, you know that I can go on and on. So far we've talked about shamanism, what it is, where it comes from, and major components of shamanic practice. Hey there, Sue. Good to see you. Thank you all for being here. Happy to see you. So I'm going to move on and keep going. We're doing a little pop-up training on shamans, in case you're coming in the middle. And this is to prep us for the Journey into Trance Masterclass that I'm teaching on the 27th. So what I want to dig into now is talking about the difference between traditional shamans and modern practitioners. Because the word is sprinkled so loosely everywhere, people don't always know what the difference is. And I feel like it's important, and it's honoring of traditional peoples to be honest and talk with you about what are some of the differences. So a traditional shaman, I'll define what I'm talking about first. A traditional shaman is someone who's born into a lineage. They're born into a lineage and they live on the land where their lineage comes from. Modern practitioners, they find shamanic practice through avenues, through family, through sometimes a traditional lineage that they're not a part of, and they adapt some of the practices to work for them and to help them and to help others. So that's what I mean. That's the two different things I'm talking about. A traditional shaman who's born into a lineage, and a modern practitioner who adapts some of the practices that come from different traditions. So I'm going to list a couple of these. There's many differences, and I'm not going to cover them all because I don't have time, but I'm going to cover a lot of them. A traditional shaman is usually identified by the elders at a young age. I was just in Arizona a couple months ago, and I was talking to a woman who lives on the Navajo reservation there, and she was explaining to me that in her culture, when a kid is looking like they are being talked to by the spirits, they get scooped up and taken to the lead. They get taken to the head shaman or the head healer. And she had a nephew who was 8 or 9, and he was experiencing a lot of spirits talking to him. And if he was in mainstream culture, he probably would have been medicated. And the little boy was starting to go a little nuts. And so they decided to take him to her grandmother, who was a shaman. And once he got some training, he was fine. Had he not been identified by the elders in his community, he probably would not be as successful as he is today. And he probably could have been called crazy, because that's what happens when people don't understand what's happening in the psyche. So traditional shamans are identified by the elders, by the people in their tribe at a young age, because people are taught to look out for that because it's part of the culture. Modern shamans or modern practitioners don't have that luxury, because in the common culture, unless someone knows what they're looking for, they don't know how to identify the signs of a child who's chosen by the spirits, which is often how it's referred to when in traditional cultures, that the children are kind of chosen. Their role is cut out for them before they're even born, oftentimes. Another difference is traditional shamans are trained by the spirits, the ancestors, and an elder in their lineage. A modern practitioner who does not come from a lineage is responsible for going to find their own teachers. Sometimes that is easy and sometimes not so easy. Usually the spirits instruct, and then there's a human mentor that comes along and comes in at some point in time. Another difference between traditional and modern. Traditional shamans go into a deep, deep trance and are often overtaken by the spirits. The spirits come through so strongly that the shaman is not having a day-to-day conversation while the spirits are coming through. And there's rituals, there's protocols, there's garb, there's ceremony, there's assistance from the community for all of this. Because we're not trained in modern culture to do that, it doesn't look that way. This is a big, big, big difference. Modern practitioners do not typically go into the level of trance that traditional shamans go into. Number one, because they're not trained to. Number two, because it's not safe, and the container, the context just isn't there. So another difference between traditional shamans usually have an intense initiation. There's an intense initiation, and traditional shamans are on an arduous, tumultuous path. It's not something that they're signing up to do, pick me, pick me, pick me. It's something that traditionally a lot of shamans don't want, but it works through them and they figure it out. So a lot of times there's a big illness that happens that helps them to grow into their healing abilities. Modern practitioners, they do have initiations and illnesses like that, but it's not always recognized as such. It's just not always recognized, and it's not always as present because we're not within the context of a tribal traditional culture. Boy, all right, I'm gonna take a breath here. Hey Karen, glad you're here. You all can feel free to pop any questions in the box while I'm talking. I'll look at them from time to time and definitely answer them when I'm done. Okay, so a traditional shaman, another difference between traditional and modern is a traditional shaman often has an unbroken lineage and a connection to their homeland. So they're on the homeland, or they're born on the land where their people have practiced. Modern practitioners in the US, most people in the US here are not on their homelands. I don't know about you, but I'm not on my homeland, and most people here are not. So there's not a connection to the homeland or to the lineage. And modern practitioners utilize techniques that are accessible, and we utilize them well, and they serve us well. But it's not the same when you're not on your homeland. It just isn't. And the last piece, but by all means, this list is not exhaustive. Traditional shamans have rituals and songs that are passed along and passed down through the spirits and through the elders. And they learn them and they work with them, and they have a power to them. And they're trained and they receive those songs and rituals. Modern practitioners, unless they're part of a lineage, create their own rituals and their own songs. So that is just a little bit of a list of the difference between traditional shamans and modern practitioners. Shamanism has really come into the spotlight in the last couple years, and with good reason, right? I have to say, so I found my teachers 20 years ago. I've been walking this path for a while, learning, sharing, sharing. And so when I first started really on the path, on the shamanic path, it was not so popular. Shamanic wasn't everywhere. People didn't even know how to describe shamanic. And now it's like, woo, everywhere. And with good reason, because it's time for us to go back to what is real. If we are to survive on this planet, and I believe that we are, we need to go back to what is real. And shamanic practice is at the core of real practices that connect us with one another, keep us humble, connect us with the earth, and get us the heck out of the way so something bigger can come through. So next I want to talk about 2 relevant practices that you can do in your everyday life. One of the things that I'm here for is to bring practices through in an appropriate way so that we as human beings on the planet can access them and access the wisdom, so we have sovereign connections with spirit in a respectful way. And so remembering that shamanism and shamans are all about relationship. They're about give and receive, ask and receive. They're not commanding or demanding, they're in relationship. And that's how they get so much information, is because their approach is just different. So the first practice is to look at the unseen, to look at yourself and the unseen world, or the natural world, as not being so far away from one another. Look at the spirit world and the spirits as being in a co-creative process with you. And what do you do when you're in a co-creative process? You don't stand around and say, help me, help me, help me. You find a way to communicate so you can ask and receive. So, well, how do you communicate? You communicate with the spirit world and the unseen world and the natural world in the same way you do here. Does it get a little more fancy as you go along? Absolutely. But the basics, the bottom line is you can begin by having conversations with the earth that's right outside your front door. You can begin by having conversations with the water. Those are 2 easy elements to have a conversation with. Say hello to the land that you live on. If you haven't already, and this is one of the first things I do when I go somewhere, is introduce myself. Hey, this is Bridget. I'm here to do this. Thanks for holding me. Thanks for being here. Please freely give me any information that I need so that I can be in a respectful relationship with you. It is that easy. And when you do that, there's a shift between what you recognize and what the earth or the water is trying to tell you. You can also do this with the rivers. The water is a sentient being. The water has spirit to it. And in shamanic cultures, the water is communicated with. Offerings are made to the water. The water is listened to, respected, responded. So you can go to a river, you can go to the water and start communicating with it. That is a very real way that you can bring a shamanic practice into your everyday life. The water will respond to you because it is alive. Water is life. Life comes to us through the water. And when you communicate with it, it will respond. You can communicate with words, you can communicate with music, you can communicate with song. I sing with the waters, and I always sing for wellness and healing. Try a practice like that. You might feel like it's a little awkward, but I'll tell you, it'll drop you right in to feeling like you are living in the earth instead of on top of it and looking at it from afar. So that's the first relevant thing that you can do from shamanic practice in your everyday life. The second thing that you can do Now, remember I said shamans restore power and balance. We have a lot of imbalances, a lot of power imbalances on the planet and within ourselves. And when we are not in our power, when we don't have our power, it becomes a problem. We can become tired, we can become exhausted, we can become depressed. A lot of things can happen when you aren't in your power, and we lose power due to trauma, due to abuse, due to a lot of things that happen on the planet, due to racism, due to people who are hating other people. There's a lot of ways that people lose power individually and collectively. Recognizing where you've lost power, and where maybe you're leaking energy because you've lost power. And it could be because there was trauma, it could be because energy is stuck, it could be because something intense happened in your life. Recognize that you may have lost power and make the decision to call it back. We give away so much of ourselves. We give away so much of our energy. Sometimes it's taken from us. When do we ever really say, that's mine, give it back, I want it back? If you have instances in your life where you got in arguments with people or you were hurt by someone else, go into a quiet place, take a couple breaths, and think about where you lost power, whether it was taken or you gave it away, and invite it back. Bring it back into your heart, into your solar plexus, and into your belly. If you make a regular practice of that, and it's easy to do, then you will have more of your energy and it'll be less all over the place. Soul retrieval is something that is common in shamanic practice. I do a lot of soul retrieval for my clients when things are really fragmented. That's another topic for another time. A way that you can call your power back, which is not the same as soul retrieval. A way that you can call your power back is to simply do what I just shared with you. That'll change how you walk in the world, I promise you. All right, I see some other folks joined. Hey there, thanks for joining. Hey, Lori, always good to see you. Hey, Elizabeth. All right, so as I end this mini training, which went longer than I thought because it's kind of hard not to, I want to recap. The word shaman comes from the 1500s when Europeans observed Siberian practice. Key components of shamanism are listening to the spirits, listening to the natural world, listening to someone's soul, being in relationship, back and forth relationship, reciprocal relationship, ceremony, and being a conduit for spirit. Those are the key components that I talked about here. Traditional shamans are born into a lineage. Modern practitioners adapt practices that are useful for connecting with spirit and helping people to heal. If you go back in here, I've listed a big long list of the difference between traditional shamans and modern practitioners. And then I gave you two relevant practices relevant to your life today. Two shamanic practices that are relevant to your life today. One is talking to the land, talking to the waters, and the other is calling your power back, inviting your power back from where it wandered off to or was given or taken. All right, so thank you for joining me. The next pop-up, I'm going to talk about how shamans talk to spirit and give you tips on talking to the unseen. That's probably going to happen over the weekend. Then stay tuned because on the 27th, I'm going to do a masterclass that's called Journey into Trance. You can tag me if you have questions. If you're interested in hands-on training with me and you know you want to experience ceremony, journeying, trance work, tag me in a comment and just let me know, and I'll make sure I get info to you. All right, I'm going to pop over and see if there's any questions, and I want to thank you for joining us. Oh, Karen, thank you. Thank you. I thank you. I'm grateful to be able to work with you. You're welcome. Any questions? Anything you're curious about? I mean, I just covered like just a slice off the edge here, but I feel like it's a good start, right? Any questions about anything I talked about? I'll wait a minute because there's often a lag here. Okay. Thank you so much for joining me. Stay tapped in because another pop-up is going to happen in the next couple days. And if you haven't registered for the masterclass on the 27th, make sure you do that. Okay. Hope you have a beautiful day, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.